Welcome to another episode of Talking Democracy. I'm your host, Darrell Hamlin. Today we're meeting with SGA Senator and Vice Presidential candidate Erin Powers. Ms. Powers is a business management major with a concentration in business law. In addition to her service in the SGA Senate, Ms. Powers is also the student coordinator of Tigers in Service at the Center for Civic Leadership. She's a member of the Delta Zeta sorority. Today we're discussing SGA elections on Talking Democracy. Welcome back to Talking Democracy. Today our guest is Ms. Erin Powers. She's an SGA Senator and the current Vice Presidential candidate for SGA. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from?
I am originally from Moreland, Oklahoma. I came to Fort Hays State on a women's golf scholarship, and I just fell in love with Fort Hays State and have continued on and being involved in other organizations such as student government.
So, did you have any family connections or friend connections to Fort Hays?
No, I actually had never heard of Fort Hays State University. I got a phone call from the golf coach and said, "What is Fort Hays State?" And so I came up here and I fell in love with the campus and the people and the atmosphere, and it's something I'm very happy I stayed.
So, your background with the athletic work on the golf team, the sorority, how much does all of that that wide amount of work inform your work on the SGA Senate and now your candidacy for Vice President?
Well, like you said, I have a very diverse background. I'm a part of Alpha Kappa Psi, which is also a fraternity that is collegiate, and I'm a part of a social sorority, and I'm a part of several other organizations on campus. So I've had a very diverse experience with either interacting with other people, planning different organizations, and just seeing what goes into different aspects of the way you're set up. And so I do bring a lot of different perspectives on how to work with other organizations, but also with being a student coordinator for Tigers in Service, I've been able to work with other organizations, not just student organizations, but such as the Kansas Food Bank. I've worked with the National Relief Network, and I've also worked with organizations in Louisiana, Colorado, so I know what it takes to collaborate on not just a local level, but on a national level.
What's the most satisfying thing that you've done?
Oh my goodness. The most satisfying thing that I could say that I've done has been to help other students find their passion for serving others. I have seen so many students come to my office and genuinely just say how thankful they are that they had this opportunity, and it's very addictive to them. They just keep volunteering, and it's been the most satisfying thing to know that I've impacted them and opened a door for them that really will help them long into the future and help others as well.
So you're a junior. You want to come back in your senior year and serve in the vice presidential capacity. Do you have any career plans yet?
Well, as of right now, I will graduate, and I would like to do something with my passion for service, such as work with AmeriCorps, and later on I would love to attend law school. So from there, we'll kind of see where life takes me.
Well, how have you enjoyed politics? You think some of that might be in your future?
You know, I'm never going to say never. So hopefully we'll see how this goes, and I have truly enjoyed the support that I've had from the students, from the faculty, so it's been an amazing experience, so I would not say no to that.
Well, as you're coming to the end of your time at Fort Hays with one last year, what is the one piece of advice you would give to an incoming student?
I would say seize every opportunity. Don't say no. Whenever your friends want to stay up late and have a movie night, do it, because you know, the knowledge you get here is amazing, but the relationships and experiences are unlike anything else you'll ever get. And so I would say invest in those relationships and make sure you keep investing into the future.
Okay, well, we're going to invest in this conversation when we come back.
Sounds good.
Just a minute. Welcome back to Talking Democracy. I'm your host today, Darrell Hamlin. Our guest is Ms. Erin Powers. She's an SGA Senator, but she's also the Vice Presidential candidate running along with Chris Powers, who is seeking a second term as the SGA President. So let's talk a little bit about the election. What?
Stop. You said Chris Powers. It's Chris Roberts.
Chris Roberts. I guess we're doing that again.
I kept a straight face. I was like,
You did well.
I'm just going to go with it.
So, all right. Thanks for, good catch, guys. Good catch.
Oh my God.
Okay. Back on Talking Democracy, our guest today is SGA Senator and Vice Presidential Candidate Aaron Powers. Now we want to talk a little bit about the election. So when is the election coming up?
Well, the elections are this Wednesday and Thursday, the 9th and 10th, and they open on TigerLink at 8 a.m. and close at 4 p.m. on Thursday.
So it's this coming Wednesday, which would be the 9th.
The 9th, yes, sir.
So it opens on the 9th, and then they can also vote on the 10th.
You can only vote one time, but the ballot is open for those 2 days.
But the opportunity to vote
Yes.
once.
Yes, one time, one vote.
So if it's coming up Wednesday, that sounds pretty soon. When was this announced?
Well, we typically, you have to meet a certain amount of senators that will be able to be on the committee to say that they're unbiased or that they are not running. And so we had to meet that before we could establish everything. But typically I have ran for Senate for the past 2 years, and you do not typically at all campaign for more than a week, simply because you're student first. It's not about running all the time. You know, first comes your schoolwork. So.
Well, that sounds about right. So when was the election determined? That when was the determination made, and who made that determination?
It is stated in our bylaws what days the elections will be. It's always the second week of April, I believe it states. So.
Okay. So then let's talk a little bit about how this election process works, because there's a lot of people who haven't been through this. I'm not terribly familiar with it myself, so tell us what the process is. Who are the people who are going to be on the ballot, and who are they going to be there to offering to represent?
Well, the way it works is every senator represents 150 people within their college. So based on the college size, that's how many senators there are. So for example, I was one that was elected to the College of Business and Entrepreneurship for the past 2 years. So I represent 150 people. So based on your college size, which is things that typically does not go up or down a lot, but they can change, that will base who are the senators. And you can only vote within your respective college, but everyone can vote for vice president and president, because after all, they represent everyone, not just a certain college. So whenever they log on to TigerLink and they go in to vote, they will be able to select a vice president and president, and then they will be able to select their senators for their respective colleges.
So you've had some experience as a senator.
Yes, sir, I have.
One of the things that we talked about when President Roberts was on the show was the understanding, or the sense that a lot of students had, and what was reported was that the senators were relatively inexperienced this last year. Did you sense that there were any sorts of problems or difficulties resulting in that? Did they seem any more inexperienced?
I would never use the word inexperienced, because we have accomplished so much as a Senate this past year that could not have been possible without all of us. And we are a young Senate, but we were a powerful and mighty Senate this past year.
Well, can you give us some examples of what they were able to do, maybe as a result of being a young Senate?
I would not say as a result of being young Senate, but because of their tenacity and how much motivation they had to actually really serve the students, we were able to have the big event. We had the Rules of Rent campaign, which went over very swimmingly. We also were able to come out with a funding guide, and really not only did the allocations member, but the senators were really there for the student organizations throughout the entire allocations process. We had workshops, so we really had a lot that we tackled this past year. Another big thing was that of trying to get the taxless textbook pushed through the House, and so that was something that the senators really just took a hold of, and they ran with it. So there were a lot of different things. We also were able to extend the library hours till 2 a.m. now, which was a big initiative that my committee, the Student Affairs Committee, really took the bull by the horns on. But without all the other help of the other senators, it wouldn't have been possible.
So with the allegations, the allocations process, was there anything different about that this year?
Well, we did come out with a how to get funding guide.
Okay.
Right when it first came out. That was one of the big things that Chris and Reed really wanted to push forward. And
What
make
kind of
sure.
information was in that guide, and who was it aimed at?
It was aimed at student organizations, but it also regarded the EOF process, the appropriations process, any process that you would need to get funding from us. It made it in a booklet so that way you understood every little aspect that it was going to go into it. But then we also had workshops. As an allocations committee, and Vice President T-Vault was in charge of those, and he led those, and we were there to answer questions. I know I sat with many one-on-ones and went line item by line item by line item. And I personally have had to put together the Tigers and Service budget before, so I know what it's like. So I was able to address their concerns on a basis that some senators may not be able to, because I actually have made this budget and I know what it's like. And so it was a very well put together process. And also President Roberts was put together a how to survive the hearing, I believe is what he called it. He did that workshop so that students would know what was going to be like, and we as a committee did not go just to make sure it wasn't a conflict of interest to say, hey, this is what we're going to ask you. But he was kind enough to put that together to know, because he was very well aware of the fact that it is a concern to go into a hearing and have to explain that, where treasurers and presidents are constantly sometimes changing. So it was a very well put together process, and I was very impressed with how it went down this year.
So do you feel like the allocations process was particularly successful this year? How would you rate that to other years that you've been through as a senator?
I think the best example of how successful it was simply the fact that we were done in about 2 hours, where typically the allocations meeting can last till midnight or later. We literally were out of that building by 9:15.
So what made the difference this year?
I really think working one-on-one, it was one of the big things that President and Vice President ran on, were the fact that they wanted to be personable and they wanted to be there for the students. And that's really what Chris and I are also bringing to the table, is that we're here for the students and we have an open door policy. And being that for the students really helped them a lot, I believe, to understand every little aspect of what was going to go in, what was going to happen, what may or may not be questioned, what they really needed to clarify. And another thing was that we had them put it in priority order, so we knew first and foremost what they really wanted. So when actually we were able to hear appeals, there was actually only 2 organizations that showed up to appeal. And that was a very impressive number, because in the previous year when I had witnessed this, that is not what happened at all. There were several organizations, and I think having them put it in priority so that we better understood what they wanted was a really big helpful thing for us all.
So what kinds of questions would people have to answer, organizations, during this hearing process?
I don't know how much I can answer of that, but I can say you're going to have to explain your budget, what you're doing, what the efficiency of the money is. At the end of the day, this is student fee dollars. We kind of are investors, and we're investing their money. So we really need to see how much it benefits the whole. At the end of the day, how much is this going to benefit every student on campus? Because this is every student on campus fee dollars, not just this respective organization.
So how many fee dollars were available to be allocated across all the organizations?
This year we gave away, I believe it was $675,000, if I remember correctly.
Was that the full amount that could be given?
Yes, we gave away every amount that we possibly could. I mean, a part of that also goes to the appropriations fund. Mm-hmm. So that way there's also that fund throughout the year for other student organizations who don't receive allocations can go through.
So if you fully fund all the organizations this year, how might that change what it is that you have to do next year?
Well, it's not that we fully fund. We were able to boost this from 60% funding what they asked to 80%. But
and where did that come from?
It was just
extra amount.
It wasn't an extra amount. It was just the way that we were able to do the funding this year. It wasn't any extra coming from anywhere. But it's never going to, I mean, you're always going to have to address each year, and you can't say, hey, I'm not going to give you money this year because I have to worry all about only student organizations next year. You have to figure out a way to do both. And we have the student fee dollars that are constant, that are always coming, and so we are very reassured in the fact that we will be able to fund organizations as well next year.
And how does this prioritization take place? What creates the priorities?
The priority on their budgets, that's up to them completely. What is the most important thing to them? What really is the end-all end-all? Some may be a trip, some may be an event they do. It's completely up to them. It's not for us to decide. This is their budget.
And is there any sort of prioritizing that goes on in terms of the way SGA looks at the funding of the organizations?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I mean, we are here to invest as best we can to make sure the student fee dollars are used to benefit as many students as possible, and that they're used to the most efficient way possible.
Okay, well, we've got to go to a break right now. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the elections and the SGA process. Welcome back to Talking Democracy. Our guest today is SGA Senator Ms. Erin Powers. We would love for you to turn your attention at this point away maybe from a lot of the nuts and bolts of the policy, maybe to a little bit of politics. Why should students vote for you?
Why should students vote for me? Well, a big part of what Chris and I are running on is not only the fact that we are personable and we're very student-oriented people, but we also bring the experience needed, especially as the university is turning a new leaf. They're having a new president, and then after that, we'll have a new provost. So we really need to be able to establish the integrity of the student government organization with experience and knowledge to move forward. And Chris and I really do bring that to the table. Another thing that Chris and I really are looking forward to integrate if we were to be elected as president and vice president would be, we want to relook at general education classes. We want to make sure that they are following what they were set to do. And this hasn't been done for over 20 years. And a big example is the MIS class. You know, we are learning Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and those are all things that our generation grew up with doing since the time we were children. So we really want to make sure those are sticking to what they were meant to do and teach you those skills that are supposed to make you a very well-rounded person to go on into the future, because typically these days you're not going to have one job, you're going to have 3 to 4 to 5 jobs. It's not back how it used to be. So another thing we want to do is make sure that we continue with the simplification of the student funding process. Another thing we want to do is make sure that we...
So more of the workshop type things?
Yes.
And you had good turnout for that?
Yes, we did. We had a very good turnout. So we want to make sure that getting funding is as simple and easy as possible, and that it's very well understood. We're all about transparency. That's really what Chris and I embody, and we want to make sure that follows through in the funding process. We also really have made leaps and bounds this past year under Chris's administration with the safety on campus. It started out hitting the ground running whenever we did our safety walk, and after that it was quite interesting to be able to get those work orders in, but we made sure it happened because it's important to us, because it's important to the students. Another thing we really want to make sure is we want to do a syllabi reform idea, where 30 days before classes would start, your syllabus would be available online, so that way you could know what you're getting yourself into before you set foot in that classroom and time is ticking before you can get your certain amount of money back. So that way you know if you have 4 to 5 essay intensive, project intensive, you may not be able to take all of them at the same time, so you may need to do some changing, and we see no reason why that wouldn't be a good advantage for students to be able to have before they set foot in that classroom.
So what would be, just using that as an example then, what would be the procedure or the approach that you would take for SGA's influence on that? Because that would also have to go through a number of other institutional organizations within the university.
Well, we would really like to see it be put onto where you enroll at, right, where you can click the books to see what books you're going to need. that's a really good handy resource that was made available to students to see what books you're going to need to kind of see how much money you're going to be spending on books, because books are not cheap. So we would like that to be available, but we are aware of the fact that there's going to be different teachers coming in, so we want it to be a minimum of 30 days, and it would be simply over there on that, so they could click that and it would be available to them. So.
And who does the SGA propose this to?
I mean, we would have to go through a lot of different avenues, as you said, but it would be something that we really think would greatly benefit the student body, and so we think a lot of different people would be on board. And I know that even faculty, we have discussed this in classes previously, and they're not opposed to it either, because they want to see students succeed just as much as we want to succeed.
Well, and it might very well be a good time for some change. You mentioned that we're in the middle of a presidential search. Then that president will be heavily involved in bringing a new provost.
Right.
And the changes that might come from that could be enormous. It might be a good time to be asking for some of that.
Yes.
So in terms of that new president then, what is it that you would like to, what kind of characteristics would you like to see in the new president in order to better work with SGA?
You know, I really would love to see a president that is as student-oriented as Dr. Hammond is. He is not afraid to walk across campus and say hi. He's not afraid to go into the bookstore and buy an umbrella when it's raining and have a conversation with you, but also be able to get out there and make connections with alumni and be innovative and as big picture thinking, and as well at delegating as President Hammond is. He's very good at making sure that things are going on well here, also while he's elsewhere, making sure that we're able to keep our tuition low.
So if you could be able to sit down with whoever the new president is, what is the thing that you would think to tell that new president is the most challenging thing they'll face?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because another big thing about Chris and myself is the fact that who better to make the relationship with the Student Government Association than someone who has actually picked and been a part of the process of picking the new president than someone who has done that. So Chris Roberts is actually on that presidential search committee, and so he has met every single candidate and spent countless hours looking over things and meeting with these people. And I myself am on the student steering committee that has been a part of giving the student perspective on just the different candidates. But at the end of the day, it is them as a committee that makes the decision. And so we have been very blessed to be able to meet with each candidate and have lunch with them and get to know them. So who better to make that relationship with than people who picked them?
Do you think the students had enough input into this process?
I definitely think it's been made available. I know it does not go up because of legal reasons and because of the jobs they currently hold. It doesn't go up until the day before. Nobody finds out who it is until the day before. And I know even the Presidential Search Committee doesn't know who it is, or they know who it is. They don't know what order they're coming in either. So I think it's been made available as much as possible. I think social media has been a great outlet that they've used to try to get in contact with the students. And so I think they've done a very good job at making sure that this has been open so that people could participate and get to know them, because it really is important, because this isn't just a president for the student. This president will be a part of our community, and just how Dr. Hammond is saying, we hope that whoever this new president is also chooses to fall in love and stay just as long as he did. So
do you know what was the source of the restriction on being able to find out about resumes or curriculums, or being able to understand who these candidates were ahead of time? Was that something that came from the board, the search committee? Who made that determination? Do you know?
You know, I have no idea who decides what information is or is not allowed, but I know that at the end of the day, the president is hired by the Kansas Board of Regents. So I know that this committee is just combined to make a recommendation to them, and that is how it works. But I know that it probably is for the best, the way that the Kansas Board of Regents decides to do that, just to make sure that their current jobs are still in a stable environment before they come here. So I'm sure they have very good rationale behind their decision and how they decide to do it. Have
there been any questions from the students that you represent that maybe the the process wasn't transparent enough to learn enough about these people before they came?
You know, I have not heard at all from students that they were unhappy with that. I know we are more than willing to explain how it will work, and you know, we know about the same time as everyone else. I mean, we find out, you know, hey, they're coming to campus. Okay, let's get to know them. And I know I share it on my social media, and that's really how we as students get our information. So I know that it's been shared and people see it, but it's just about time. You know, they're only here for so much time. So sometimes that time isn't available, but we can't keep them here forever to keep talking to them. As much as we'd like to be able to spend a lot more time with them, time is of the essence, as they'd say.
And of course, that's the argument that people are making for being able to see the CVs and resumes ahead of time to make the best and most efficient time that we have, being able to talk to them face to face. So looking back at your time as a senator, what's the thing that you're most proud of that you've been a part of accomplishing?
I would definitely say the library hours that we were able to be extended till 2 a.m. That was something that we actually did a paper survey where we got to count every single one of them back up when we got them back. And that was something that I was really instilled in me that I wanted to do, because I know as a student getting all those Survey Monkey things in my student email, there's no way I can take all of them. There's no way. So we actually reached out to the different colleges and the professors, and they gave them out, and we had to count them all back up. And as much fun as that was, it was well worth it, because we really found out, you know, with over a 75% working population of students, we really need to make sure that they have that resource available, because some majors, they only can use those resources in the library. Sometimes they're not able to check it out. And so if it's not open, they can't do their homework, and that's a problem, and that's not okay. And we wanted to make sure that that was available for them so that they could have a nurturing environment to study. I know I lived in a sorority house with 18 girls. You know, you want to be able to have a place where you can study on your own, and we wanted to make sure and give that environment to all students so that they had that opportunity where it was an environment that was, like I said, nurturing to what they needed to accomplish to be successful in school.
Well, this has been a fun and informative conversation here, but we've reached our time limit. Thank you very much for being with us today. Our guest today was Ms. Erin Powers. Thank you for being our guest. It's always a pleasure to have you. We encourage our viewers to check out Talking Democracy and other services offered at the Tiger Media Network at tmn.fhsu.edu.